And talking about the sun exposure, so what are your thoughts on sunbathing without sunscreen? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's good to avoid burning. Burning is not good, and that it's natural that it starts to hurt, right? It's literally saying this is not no bueno, no, this is not good. So it's good to avoid the burning, but I would never use any chemical products myself. Instead, this is something quite funny. I like to use coconut oil or olive oil. Is more recently what I'm using. And people see you putting olive oil on when you're sunbathing at the beach, like, bro, you're gonna burn. What are you doing? What are you doing? I'm like, the olive oil is so effective that you literally cannot even tan if you use olive oil. So olive oil, I've been testing it for years, going in the blistering sun, like here in Africa, the sun is very strong, and you never burn if you have the olive oil. So I would not recommend personally using any kind of chemical products to do that.
Do you have like a sun protocol, or like I call it sun maxing, okay? Because I absolutely love the sun. Yeah. But I do have like a sort of like a way how because I mean, if you are used to just being, under blue light, just working at a laptop, and you're completely white, and to go outside, like no matter what you're putting on, if you're gonna be outside for like an hour, you're gonna get fucking burnt. You know what I mean? Do you have like some sort of like a way how you prep your skin or your body before you go out? Like do you go out let your skin sort of adapt to the sun?
The key is eating so much cholesterol. That is the key to not burning in the sun. So I have friends that are pale Swedish friends, pale Swedish guys, the least, let's say, suited to tanning, but they eat so much cholesterol that they can endure the sun like a Southern European can, just because they eat so much cholesterol. So the key is having the fat in the skin, and that is what will prevent you burning, right? That's why you add the topical fats. They do the same thing. So having just a lot of fat in the diet will translate to having a lot of fat in the skin, and then you can withstand the sun much better. That's why I think if Brian Johnson goes in the sun, he would burn in 10 seconds.
So
right.
What I thought is the addition of seed oils in your diet is causing like the sunburn. So you're saying that
as well. It's the absence of raw fat, the replacing it with something that is not, let's say, natural, or something that is toxic. In the case of like a seed oil, it makes people burn more.
I would love to speak about this because I'm super fascinated about the entire topic of like seed oils and processed foods, and like, fuck, I don't even know where to look. On the one side, people think it's fine and it's good, and studies show it's fine. Other people believe completely. Like, I have no idea what to believe. And but like what we do know is that chronic diseases. Let me just make sure my numbers are correct. Like on average, chronic diseases have gone up by 300-400%. And then just like previously mentioned, some people believe everything is like the seed oil's fault, and it is sort of all of these processed foods and those type of chemical stuff like that. And other people believe it's just because people are eating more food because they're highly palatable foods, and they are picking up more body fat. What is your sort of take on that? Like just seed oils and processed foods in general?
Well, it's the reason all of those, let's say, numbers are increasing. The biggest change in our lives over the last few hundred years that's creating this increase in all the types of diseases is actually relating to the toxins. Seed oil itself is a toxin. So before the Industrial Revolution 250 years ago, there was far less exposure to industrial toxins. Things like burning coal, for example. When you burn coal, it creates mercury in the air, goes into the ground, into the water, and into the food. So the cause of really almost every health problem today is actually related to the industrial toxins and the amount of them that we have today in our environment. So that's really the main issue. Seed oils is one example of an industrial toxin. So it's really about the Industrial Revolution and the changes that brought about.
So is it like as bad as we like you stay away from seed oils, obviously?
Oh yeah, I mean 100%. I mean you can feel it, if you don't eat any processed food, whether it's a seed oil or something else, and then for like you take like a year off and then you eat some of that, you feel very groggy, you don't feel good, so it's very observable. Let's say if you go away from it and you go back to it, you don't want to continue eating it.
That's a good point. Oh, and the numbers, by the way, I mentioned is from the 1970 to today. That's when like the 300-400% increase came.
Right. Well, if you look at seed oil consumption, it's also increased.
Yeah.
It's not the only thing, but like that is, there's a correlation there of the seed oil increase. Raw milk is also another example. All milk was raw until not so long ago. 100 years ago or so, that pasteurized milk became the standard. Let's say that people were consuming. Yeah. And with that, you see all the allergies increasing and things of that nature.
Have you seen like a lot of people? Especially some people that I speak with, like they see me drinking raw milk and they're thinking, "Oh, you're gonna get TB, bro! Like you're gonna get sick." What is your take on that? Like I've never gotten sick. I've been drinking raw milk for like the past 3 years, probably like every other day. I've never gotten sick.
Well, I take that there's two perspectives to look at the bacteria argument. One is the germ theory, which says bacteria makes you sick, certain types of bacteria make you sick, and then the terrain theory, which is the opposite. And I lean on the terrain theory, which is to say that bacteria doesn't make you sick, and everything I do is logical if you believe that, you know. So I consume a lot of bacteria. I don't do things like, I don't use like chemical products in my house, stuff like that. So there's no killing bacteria in my lifestyle. And that's just the logical follow-up of believing that bacteria isn't harmful.
That's the thing also, like when we were younger, we would play in the sand, you know, even the parents would say, oh, it's fine, you know, the dirty hands, like they're getting in bacteria. But as we get older, in our adult life, they're like, no, bacteria is bad all of a sudden.
It's an interesting point. Even doctors will say things like, don't be too clean, right? At least they used to say that. But who's really practicing that today? No one. That's something that's changed maybe since 2020 and all the good stuff that happened.
Oh yeah, with the hand sanitizing and stuff like
that.
Oh,
right.
Yeah,
but
sure.
people, even doctors, used to say, "Don't be too clean." You know, don't let your baby go in the mud. But who's really practicing that today? And everything that I do is just I go to the end of that idea, basically, because that's in line with what I believe, that bacteria isn't harmful; it's actually beneficial. So if you go all the way with the "don't be too clean," you end up like me, let's say, drinking blood and doing crazy stuff. So yeah,
that's a great segment. I need to know more about this drinking blood. Where did that happen? I think you were in a tribe in Africa. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, everyone thinks drinking blood is crazy, but the composition of blood and milk is actually very similar. Milk just doesn't have the red blood cells, which gives blood that beautiful aesthetic color. So if you remove the red blood cells from the milk, if you remove red blood cells from blood, the composition is actually quite similar to milk. Obviously, there's some subtle differences, but to give like a broad, a summary is like that. So drinking blood, it sounds crazy until you understand that it's actually very similar to milk, and everyone likes milk, so most people would like blood. But drinking the blood is something that, if you look at tribes all around the world, they've been doing that for thousands of years potentially, or as long as they know, basically. And it's something that the blood carries a lot of nutrients. And it's a very resourceful way for people to have a lot of food, this tribe specifically, without having to kill a whole animal. So yeah, I mean, drinking blood contains a lot of iron, contains all of the nutrients, has a lot of oxygen in there, and it's just a healthy food. Obviously, our culture is a million miles away from making blood drinking normal, which is why it gets so many crazy reactions when I do it. But if you take my perspective that bacteria isn't harmful and unprocessed raw nutrients from animal foods are the best, drinking blood is literally the healthiest thing that you could do, which is why I say it all the time. Like, I drink as much blood as I can, The other day I was here in Africa, we went hunting ostriches, and I shot an ostrich, and the first thing I do, I run over there, I'm like cutting its neck, trying to drink as much of this blood as I can. It looks extremely primitive. I can like overlay a clip. It's really crazy. And I'm like trying to pour this ostrich blood down my throat. And it looks crazy, but it makes perfect sense if you understand what I understand, or if you have the same beliefs as I do. It's literally the healthiest thing.
How does your gut feel after that? Like your gut is probably used to the amount of bacteria. Like, I think if I need to hit blood like that, it's gonna be upsetting my stomach.
Right. It can do at the beginning. Yeah. And that's there's a little paradox there that you have to kind of, because it's not what you're used to. Yeah. And so as the bacteria, let's say you repopulate the bacteria, what do bacteria actually do? They feed on toxicity. So all of us, every single one of us, has a lot of toxins even inside of our digestive tract. So as the bacteria there, they will feed on that toxicity, and there can be some side effects, which is what people might call food poisoning, as you're doing that, usually in the beginning. As you switch to eating raw meat, it can be the case, if you don't do it correctly especially, that you might have an upset stomach in the beginning. And that's then people say, oh, it didn't work for me, I got scared. But it's like, well, one, you can avoid that. Secondly, it's actually, you have to shift your perspective on what does it mean to be sick, and what is actually your body trying to heal itself. So it's a bit of a funny one there. But it wouldn't surprise me if you were getting a bit sick in the beginning, let's say, at the very beginning. Yeah. But it also wouldn't surprise me if you weren't, to be honest. It depends on how healthy the person is when they start. Yeah. If they're really sick at the beginning, they're going to have a rough time. But if they're less sick, and less sick means less medicated, they had less illnesses and so forth when they were children, they can adjust much faster because they have less toxicity themselves.
I want to touch on your coaching business for a bit.
Sure.
So, you obviously help mostly young men?
Mostly guys between the ages of 80, because, entrepreneurs. Okay. These days, there's a lot of young entrepreneurs, 18-year-olds making millions of dollars. So let's say successful young entrepreneurs from the age of 18 all the way to guys in their 50s.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So like I've been eating for the gym, hitting the gym for a while, like 6 years.
Yeah.
And I also started incorporating more like, rare meat, you could say, like,
Yeah.
rare steak, stuff like that. And would you say that helps with muscle gain as well? Eating raw meat?
Yeah, absolutely, because raw meat has a lot of creatine, and creatine is one of the things that you lose when you heat the meat. There's lots of other things that you lose, but creatine is one of them. And so if you started to eat like a 2-3 pounds of raw meat a day, which is like 1.2 kilos, you would probably see that you start to have that kind of creatine look that people get, right? When you drink or when you consume creatine powder, you get that kind of puffed up water look. You can get the same from eating raw meat. And it would make sense that it would speed up the muscle growth. Not just how much muscle you grow. The thing that I've observed with raw meat is that it makes your muscles much more dense, and it translates to longer lasting muscle with less stimulus needed. So you can retain your muscle much better when you're consuming raw meat. When people say they go on holiday, I didn't gym for a week, now I've lost all my gains, It's like, that doesn't happen when you eat raw meat. As long as you continue to eat raw meat, obviously as soon as you stop, well, not as soon as, but let's say if you stop doing it consistently, you're not going to have the same benefits. But yeah, if you eat a lot of raw meat, you can retain muscle so easily. You can even gain muscle without even training. There's been a lot of very skinny guys that started to eat raw meat, and you see that, and they don't go to the gym, and they just look very different. They've built some natural lean baseline of muscle has just increased just from changing the diet, just from eating raw meat.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very conducive to faster or better results in the gym. Of course, you can say, well, look at all these guys, they don't eat any raw meat and they're super jacked. The most important thing is, if you want to look big, is to actually train. So the diet is kind of secondary actually to the training. But in terms of like long lasting results and retention of muscle with less stimulus, raw meat is the king.